Our syllabus starts with the first unit. In that, the first section is another counting principle. So in this, we are going to derive the class equation, Cauchy's theorem, the number of conjugate classes in Sn. So we will just recollect the basic definitions what you have learned in BSc, namely the definition of an equivalence relation. A relation R from a set A onto itself, or we simply say that it's a set on, it's a relation on A, is an equivalence relation if for every ABC in A is related to itself for every A in A. Whenever A is related to B, B must be related to A, that's symmetry. And whenever A is related to B, B is related to C, we should have our A is related to C, that's our transitivity. So any relation which satisfies these three conditions is called an equivalence relation. So once we talk about the equivalence relation, we have to talk about the equivalence class. So the equivalence class of any element in A, because on A only we have defined. So on A you have defined an equivalence relation which can be denoted like this also, which is called a tilde. So class A, for any element A in capital A, we define class A, which is denoted as within the square bracket, you have to put that A. There's the set of all those elements which are related to A. All those elements, so if we have a set, all those elements which are related to A, you consider a set A on which you are defining a relation which happens to be an equivalence relation. And you consider an element, say A in capital A, we want to find out what are the elements of A that are related to A. So maybe this element related to A, this may be related to A, and this one may be related to A. So in such case, I will have my class A consisting of only these three elements. So suppose I name them as say B, C, D. Then when we try to find the equivalence class of B, okay, it will be same as equivalence class of A. So that is because A is related to B. So that is what the second condition here we have made as remark. A is related to B if and only if class A is equal to class B. Whenever equivalence class of A is equal to equivalence class of any other element, then what does it mean? My A and B should be related. And whenever A is related to B, equivalence class of A will be equal to equivalence class of B. So this property will help us in finding the actual number of equivalence classes instead of finding for each and every element. The one which is repeated we are not going to consider. So whenever A is related to B, you have your class A to be equal to class B. But definitely I have my class A to be a non-empty subset because every element is related to itself. Every element is related to itself, that's our first condition. So definitely this class A is non-empty subset of A. And the second one, whenever A is related to B, then class A should be equal to class B. So in this case, class A must be equal to class A, class A must be equal to class D. And any two equivalence classes are either disjoint or identical. So the actual job of equivalence relation is to divide this A into disjoint equivalence classes. So when we consider these equivalence classes, it actually slices our capital A. So when you consider these equivalence classes, they will be subsets of A, and any two will be either disjoint or identical. So when they are related, then in that case the equivalence class will be the same. Otherwise they are disjoint. And not only that, the union, suppose I have it as a class A and this is say class B and this is say class C, then in that case A is the union of all those equivalence classes which are disjoint. So that is what the fundamental theorem on equivalence relation says. So this we make, and this is known to as bijective mapping. Whenever I have a mapping sigma from S to T, which is both 1, 1 and 1, 2, we say that there exists a one-to-one correspondence between these two. We have a one-to-one correspondence between these two, and in that case sigma is called a bijective mapping. And when we have S to be, when S consists of finite number of symbols, when S consists of finite number of symbols, then in that case we say that S suffix n to be the collection of all permutations on n symbols. You have n symbols. It can be say 1 to the numbers 1 to n, or some alpha, beta, gamma, or some other some symbols that we need to have. Finite in number means how many you count, then we can talk about S suffix that number. So that is nothing but collection of all permutations. Collection of all permutations on n symbols. If we have only 3 symbols, say 1, 2, 3, then in that case S3 denote the collection of all permutations on 3 symbols. And we have if S consists of 3 elements, then S3 will consist of 3 factorial elements. S3 will consist of 3 factorial elements whenever S has 3 elements. Whenever S has 3 elements, S3 will consist of 3 factorial elements. So order of S3 will be nothing but 3 factorial. So in general, if S has n elements, then order of Sn will have n factorial elements. Order of Sn will be n factorial elements. So we consider this. This is again UG portion. So we have actually 6 bijective mappings. So what are they? We consider the permutation epsilon, identity permutation takes any element to itself. So there are only 3 elements. See what the first 2 elements denote as the elements of S. You have domain to be S and codomain also to be S. Domain as well as codomain to be S. So when we consider identity mapping, it should take any element to itself. So 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. And in alpha we fix 3. So the other 2 are permutated. In beta 2 is fixed. In gamma 1 is fixed. And in delta we write cyclically. Your delta looks like your Tamil letter E. So pinnadi varadu 1, after that 2. So 1 ku pinnadi varadu, 2 ku pinnadi varadu, 3 ku pinnadi means it ends, so naturally it should be 1. So your delta looks like this Tamil letter P. So in that way also you can remember. And theta, when we consider theta, your theta will look like our mode. So in that case 1 க்கு முன்னாடி இருக்கிறது 3, 2 க்கு முன்னாடி இருக்கிறது 1, 3 க்கு முன்னாடி இருக்கிறது 2. So in that way also delta and theta can be remembered. So epsilon is the identity mapping which takes any element to itself. For alpha you fix 3, for beta you fix 2, for gamma you fix 1. Delta cyclically it should be written after 1, after 2. After that you have 2, 2, after that you have 3, 3, after that you have 1. And theta the previous one. So 1 means 3, 2 means 1, 3 means 2. So these are the 6 permutations on these 3 symbols, and they form a group under composition of mappings. So here we define the composition as, see, suppose I want to find what is alpha composition beta. I want to find what is alpha composition beta. So in that case what do? I consider alpha. I consider alpha composition beta. What do? Is I will write the elements in the domain which are 1, 2, 3. So I will write the elements in the domain in the first row. Then from left to right, the operation is from here to here that we go. So we look at alpha, this 1, okay, taken to 2, and after that we will have to apply beta, so that 2 is taken to 2. So you have 2, and then second one is 2. 2 is taken to 1, and 1 is taken to 3, so you have 2 is taken to 3, and next is 3 is taken to 3, then 3 is taken to 1, so you have 1. So this is nothing but 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 1 is nothing but your delta. So you have in the table your alpha composition beta to be delta. So in the same way for any two elements, when we consider by considering the composition of mappings, we can easily fill up the table. This will be used whenever S3 is used in the context. So this is the table for your KLA table for your S3. And in the case of D4, you have in the case of D4, this is nothing but group of symmetries of a square which has 4 sides. Okay, so that is why it is denoted as D4. This Dn in general denotes the group of symmetries of a regular polygon with n sides, but here we consider this. Symmetries are the transformations which leave the plane figure unaltered in position. So consider the transformation which leave the square ABCD unaltered in position. They are only called as symmetries. So in this case, when we consider a square, when you rotate the square, through 90 degrees, again you will get only a square. Whereas in the case of rectangle, when you rotate it through 90 degrees, then you will not get, you will get only rectangle, but the position will be altered. It will be like this, But in the case of square, the position is unaltered, so that is one of the symmetries. So R90 is one of the symmetries. And in the similar way, on R180, R270, R360, it is actually 360. And when you keep a mirror here, it will just reflect this. So again you will get the square only. On the other hand, even in this case also, when you keep a mirror over here, you will get this one. And in the same way here, when you keep a mirror, again you will get the square. So they are reflection about GH and EF. So R suffix reflection is denoted as with small r, and rotation is denoted with capital R. So R90, 180, 270, 360, and GH, R, EF, and RAC. So when you consider along the diagonal, if you keep a mirror, then also, whereas in this case when you keep a mirror like this, then it will go like this, but so in that case you will have your position being altered. Your position will be altered. So in that case you cannot consider R suffix. This AC cannot be a symmetry, whereas here it holds. So like this you will get 8. So 4 rotations and 4 reflection, altogether 8. Later we need to refer this, so we name them as rho 1, rho 2, rho 3, and rho 0, rho 1, rho 2, rho 3, and here mu 1, delta 2, mu 2, delta 1. So, and then as we did in the previous case, we can consider the composition of mappings, and we can form this table. So again this also will be referred later. And the next is S4. See, we have said that already when S consists of n elements, then Sn will consist of n factorial elements. So here when S consists of 4 elements, what are the 1, 2, 3, then in that case S4 will consist of 4 factorial elements. They are 24 in number. So those 24 elements are listed here. So they have to be memorized. All the 24 elements, later we will be using them. So that is listed here. And another concept what is needed for this section is definition of a subgroup. That is we are familiar with, but we have to pay attention on the criterion. What is the criterion for any subset H of G? You have a group G, so in that H you have as a subcollection. When do you have, this is a group, So when do you say that this sub-collection to be a group? So under the same operation, this would be a group under some operation. So under the same operation, if this itself forms a group, then you call that to be a subgroup. In that case, you call that to be a subgroup. Okay, then every time we cannot be checking that. So this is the condition that we use. So this criterion will be used to take two elements A and B in H. So if you have A dot B inverse also to be in H, if that is also a member of this, it should not be here, it should be here itself. Then in that case you say that H to be a subgroup. Suppose I have my H consisting of a finite number of elements. It has only finite number of elements. Then in that case it is enough I consider only one condition, namely whether it is closed. H is closed. So H is finite subset in G, then H is a subgroup if it is closed. Closure alone is enough to check. Closure is enough to check whether it is a subgroup. Otherwise, we will have to check A dot B inverse. Where are those A, B should belong to H. So here we have the definition, another counting principle. It starts with the definition of conjugate element. When do we say that two elements to be conjugate? So, if A and B are two elements in G, B is said to be a conjugate of A in G if there exists an element C in G such that B is equal to C inverse AC. So it is something similar to your definition of similar matrices, what you would have learned in BSc. Similar matrices, it's something similar to that. You have in this case B and A are said to be conjugate of each other if we can find an element C in G. Because C is present in G, G is a group, inverse will definitely exist. So there is no need to mention that there exists an invertible element as you do in the case of similar transformation. Here there is no need to mention about it. It is enough we just say that if there exists an element C in G such that B is equal to C inverse AC. This relation on G is named as conjugacy. This relation is named as conjugacy. So in the first lemma we are going to prove that this conjugacy is an equivalence relation. You have a group and on that group you are defining a relation. Two elements are related by this relation. Once you have a relation, you will check the three conditions and check whether it's an equivalence relation or not. So this is an example. We are going to say that beta and gamma are conjugates. We are going to say that beta and gamma are conjugates. So that means if I am able to write my beta and gamma in terms of some other element like this. So you can verify from the table that your delta inverse gamma delta inverse is theta. Delta inverse is theta because delta with theta only gives me epsilon. So delta inverse is theta. So delta inverse is theta. And you are going to compute theta gamma delta now. You are going to compute theta gamma delta now. What is theta gamma? Theta gamma is alpha. So this is, we are going only from left to right. So alpha delta you have. What is alpha delta? Alpha delta is gamma. So I am getting delta inverse gamma, delta inverse is theta. So we have written that theta and then theta gamma delta. Theta gamma delta. Theta is here, theta gamma is alpha and alpha delta is beta. Sorry, this alpha delta is beta. Alpha delta is beta. So that is why you can say that your beta and gamma are conjugates. But we are going to later have at the end of the section that we can easily compute what are the elements which are conjugate to each other. So that list we can, instead of going by this roundabout method, that is an easy method that we will, that is applicable only in SN. That result holds only in SN, that we will see at the end of this section. So conjugacy is an equivalence relation is the first lemma. First one is reflexivity. Every element is related to itself because E will serve the purpose, so that we can easily have. And suppose I have A is related to B, then you can find on X such that B is equal to X inverse AX. You can always find an invertible and apply the condition, so you get this. Then pre-multiply, post-multiply by X and X inverse, then you have this. So that implies that B is related to A. Then transitivity, you have whenever A is related to B, you have B is equal to X inverse AX, and you take A related to B, B related to C. That's our assumption. So you can find another y such that C is equal to Y inverse BY, and C is equal to, just replace in the place of B, you have to substitute this, then you will get this. So rewriting Y inverse X inverse is nothing but XY the whole inverse. So you, for convenience sake, you can take this as some D. So you have D inverse AD, where D is XY. So even that condition is satisfied. So because all the three are satisfied, we conclude that conjugacy is an equivalence relation. So in section A, if the question is asked, prove that conjugacy is an equivalence relation, we are supposed to first define what is conjugacy. So don't simply start verifying the condition without defining what is conjugacy. So define conjugacy and then start checking the conditions. So the conjugate class of A, we know already that whenever we have equivalence relation, we will have to talk about the equivalence class. So in this case, that equivalence class is called as conjugate class, and it is denoted as, usually this is the notation that we use, but here this notation, capital C of A is used. And we can see that there is one more notation coming, that is small c suffix A. Both are should not be misunderstood. C of A, capital C means it denotes the set. Small ca, that denotes the number of elements. See, when you have your G to be finite, C of A being a subset of G will also have finite number of elements. See, the number of elements, order of C of A is only denoted as small c suffix A. So both the C of A and small ca will come in the picture. So C of A is all those elements which are related to A. The definition is, you can have given X and A, you can always find Y such that Y inverse AY is X. So you have your X consisting of, your C of A consisting of just elements of the form Y inverse AY. Now by the fundamental, so what this relation has done, it has sliced our G like this. It is sliced. So this is say one C of A, and this is say one C of B, capital C, and so on. So the union of all this should give me G. That's the fundamental thing. So G is equal to union of all C of A. Now if G is a finite group, then I can talk about order of G. So order of G is, see, we know this result, order of A union B. Order of A union B is order of A plus order of B minus order of A intersection B. So if A intersection B does not contain any element, then this will not come. So it will be order of A union B will be just order of A plus order of B. And here these are all disjoint. So when you find the intersection, it will be definitely an empty set. So you will not have any element there. So order of those intersection will be 0. So that is why here we have order of G to be order of C of A plus order of C of B plus order of C of C, and so on. So that is why we have this summation where A range over capital G. And this is notation that we use. The number of elements is denoted as small c suffix a. This is capital C of A, this is small c suffix a, and we have this. So in the case of S3, we can find out what is C of alpha. If you proceed by this method, it's an elaborate method. So patiently you can try it. So C of alpha will consist of 3 elements, namely alpha, beta, gamma. So because it is in the conjugate class of alpha, there is no need to separately find the conjugate class of beta. It will be same as this only. And then we go to, and similarly C of gamma also. C of delta will consist of delta theta. Again we are not going to separately find, it will be same as this. So distinct equivalence classes are C of epsilon, C of alpha, C of delta. So order of G will be what? Order of C of epsilon. C of epsilon consists of only one element, so you have 1. And C of alpha consists of 3 elements, so you have 3 here. And delta, C of delta consists of 2 elements, so you have 2. So 1 plus 3 plus 2, that's 6, and that is nothing but the number of elements in S3. We have 6 in number, so this is what we have. Right, so that we are going to have as class equation as a corollary to this theorem. So before we go to this theorem, we need to have that N of A is a subgroup of G. N of A is nothing but all those elements which commute with A. All those elements in G which commute with A. What is A? A is some element in G. So N of A, the normalizer of A in G is denoted as N of A. And N of A is a subgroup of G is established. First we have to show that it's non-empty. And even this is a lemma in BSA. So we need to prove that it's a subgroup. So as said earlier, you have to consider 2 elements. It's not finite. If I am given G finite, closure alone is enough. Otherwise, we have to consider 2 elements xy in N of A and show that xy inverse also in N of A. Which means any element will belong to N of A provided it commutes with A. So xy inverse A should be equal to A xy inverse. So for which what are known to as A, x belongs to N of A, so it will commute with A. Y belongs to N of A, so it will commute with A. So these two relations that we have. So from this we are going to have our Y as A by A inverse. Therefore Y inverse will be this. And substituting, we want to show that xy inverse belongs to N of A. So which means xy inverse should commute with A. So for which you consider xy inverse into A, and you are going to replace your y inverse by this one. So you have this, and simplifying this you get this. Associativity is used, and here xa is nothing but ax. Xa is nothing but ax, and then again associativity is used. So you get this A into xy inverse. So xy inverse A is same as A xy inverse, and therefore xy inverse belongs to N of A, showing that your N of A is a subgroup.